It starts out as one of the life challenges relative to my taking charge of my grandson's life, who was 3 years old at the time. Um, Custody of him was lost by his parents, and he was about to go into foster care. The people who were going to take him were not in it from a sincere or loving place. They were in it for the foster care money. When I found out about this, and this became an interstate custody battle with my taking charge of him from the courthouse without permission. And so they actually issued a warrant for kidnapping against me. It was a cold, dark night. I was driving on a secluded state road that wasn't traveled often. I had my 3-year-old grandson in the car with me. I was leaving North Carolina, trying to get back home for a Thanksgiving holiday. I lived in Northern Virginia outside of DC at the time, and I was driving alone. Naturally, my car broke down. I had flares to go around the car. I lit them and put them around the car, took the car off to the side of the road. And for about a half an hour in the very cold weather, my grandson and I were just sitting in the car. There was no other cars on the road. A tractor-trailer truck came out of nowhere and parked behind my car. The driver got out and he looked at the car. He said, "There's nothing that we can do to fix this car tonight." He said, "But I'm on my way to the Tyson's Corner area of Northern Virginia." And I said, "Will you take us?" And he said, "Yes." He literally picked up my grandson in his arms, escorted me to his truck, and helped us into a tractor-trailer truck. I'd never been in a tractor-trailer truck before. And there was a little sleeping area behind his seat, which my grandson was able to go to sleep on. As we were riding, we were talking a little bit, and the gentleman told me that he had never traveled on that road before, and he had only had his truck for 6 weeks. And he was making furniture runs for a customer that he had just acquired or contracted. He was a retired Gold Shield police officer from New York City. The area that he was working in as a police officer was where I grew up in New York City. Of course, I could not let him know that he was carrying a person or transporting a person in his vehicle who had a warrant out for her arrest, was on the FBI list to be arrested for kidnapping, and that the child that was in his vehicle was the kidnapped child. Well, we rode for about an hour, and there were police sirens that pulled up around his vehicle. One police car pulled in front of him and another police car pulled behind him, and they made him pull over to the side of the road. Now, we had only been traveling at that time about an hour. I was a little shook because I thought that this was something that they were after me. He came out of his truck. He took his gold shield badge with him, and he went to talk to the two police cars that were waiting for him when he stepped down out of his truck. He came back to the truck a few minutes later, and he said that it was that they stopped him because he had been on the road too many hours, and they needed for him to go to the next rest stop. He said he explained to them that he was taking a lady, transporting a lady to a different destination, and they said, "We're sorry, she's going to have to find other transportation. You have to come off of this road." So they literally escorted him off the exit, which was just a few minutes away from where they had stopped him. We came out of that exit. There was a rest stop there. I came down out of the truck and went to inside the rest stop and made a telephone call. I wanted to call my brother, who had been waiting for me, to let him know that I didn't know exactly where I had been stopped, and I wasn't sure of how I was going to get home with my grandson. When I made the telephone call, and this is a time when there were no cell phone, I had no cell phones, there was no internet at the time, there was no texting. And so there was a pay telephone booth inside. I had to, and I made the call, and my brother said that I had had a telephone call from a childhood friend of mine that I had not heard from in over 30 years. And he gave me her telephone number and asked me to give her a call to see how close I was to where she was.
Mary, your mic is echoing. I don't know what's causing it.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
See if you can go look. Can you I'm not sure why
Diana,
it was
I hear
fine
you're
before.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Is anybody else experiencing problems? Because I hear Mary okay.
Yeah, I hear Mary okay too.
Diana, I guess it's on your side.
I can't hear Diane at all. Okay. Olga, I'll just continue.
Yes.
Okay. So I took the telephone number, and my friend's name was Judy. And I called Judy. It was about 11 o'clock that night. And I said to Judy, Judy, I don't know where I am. And she said, well, ask someone. And I did. And she said, well, you're only 10 miles away from where I am. I'll come and get you. So Judy came and got me and my grandson, and we stayed at her house throughout the Thanksgiving holiday. I explained to her, and I had never met her husband before, and she had twin daughters and a son. She had 3 children of her own that I had not met before. And Judy and I had known each other since we were like 10 years old. I explained to them what the circumstances were. I was a little concerned that if we were found there, that they would be in trouble housing us. But her husband insisted that we stay. And so we spent our Thanksgiving with them. To have a truck driver who was a Gold Shield police officer who had never traveled that road before to stop and get us. He was the first angel in the night that particular night. Judy, a childhood friend that I had not seen in over 30 years, was the second angel in the night to come and get us. The police officers that escorted that truck off the road safely so that that truck driver could get some rest was the third set of angels in the night. It's always amazing to me from life's challenges that we're protected even when we don't recognize that we are. It took me 3.5 years, 7 attorneys, and a forensic psychologist to actually get the full custody of my grandson. Eventually, through a lot of trials and tribulations, that warrant for my arrest was dropped. But it took a long legal battle to get it done. So I have, and my grandson is now 32 years old. This started when he was 2. He is still here and living in my house. He's out working today, but I protected him. I was protected, and I am always grateful when I see him walk in and out of the door. So that's one of the life challenges that I experienced. There were a lot of lessons that I learned through that particular experience, and it had to do with leaving no stone unturned. Not having the technology at the time put me in a situation where I had to make telephone calls. I had to find representation. I had to go to the library. I did not know of anyone who had ever gone through an experience like that. I believe that our case probably is in the legal statutes as a precedent, because one of the judges that was overseeing this particular situation, who actually issued the warrant for my arrest, she ruled against me. And another judge in the state of Virginia ruled for me. The advice that the judge in Virginia gave me was that I was to not ever go into the state of California, because in the state of California, she had not dropped that warrant, nor was she willing to, because she wanted my grandson returned to that state. The social services department also was an eye-opener for me, because they actually paid the foster care people that they had selected for 3.5 years, even though they didn't have the child. I had him with me, but they continued to pay for 3.5 years until this was settled. I can't imagine money's being spent that way, but that's a part of the way our system is. I also learned to be kind to every single stranger that you meet, but also to be smart in not allowing anyone to take your kindness for weakness. It's a wonderful thing to have faith, but there are people who don't want to work in conjunction with what your goals or objectives are. And you have to be aware of that and just not be taken advantage of. That's my story for today.